First Things, episode 146.
I seem to be lost.
And so you're working around the clock so you don't take time for yourself to feel like an actual human being.
I used to feel like no matter how hard I worked, I was just spinning my wheels.
Try to be perfect. We try to have everything in place at one point in time, and you can't.
Hello and welcome to First Things, the podcast dedicated to practical productivity based on modern research. My name is Dr. Brandon Vaughn, and it's my goal to help you apply productive solutions to your life to help you live with less stress, greater passion, and amazing results. Great to be back with you today, especially after the last episode, right, where I was like, I'm basically burning out. Been thinking about what I could do to make that a lot better. I was poking around in my podcast settings and realized that there was a bunch of outlets that my podcast wasn't reaching into, such as Samsung Podcast, of all things. So I've gone through to make sure I'm enabled there. They may actually help. Also want to get better about doing certain types of outreach and advertising to let people know about it. You might know that I've spun up a YouTube channel called That Tie-Dye Guy, and I realized that what I should be doing is kind of integrating more of those two ideas together. So for example, all of the podcasts I do here should be populating in that YouTube channel so people can listen to it on YouTube. It's not. Having some technical difficulties with that, but eventually I get that figured out. And eventually what I might start doing, I'm kind of debating this, is to do some type of a video podcast. So maybe I integrate the two ideas. I'm kind of thinking about this because in the past I thought it's nice that I can just sit here and rant for like 30 minutes about things. But it's also nice I have this outlet. I can do these quick 5-minute videos that get right to the point and do this that way. But I've been thinking maybe I should do some kind of a combination of these. Maybe what I should do is focus more on a podcast through video that I publish on YouTube. I can take little pieces of that and publish it on the Facebook or the YouTube Shorts or TikTok. And then I create an audio version of what I'm doing right now and put it onto regular podcasts. So basically what you're hearing me right now, maybe there would be an actual video of me talking through this. I'm debating it though. Not quite sure it's what I want to do, but it would batch things together. And batching is one of the things we've been talking about recently that would enable, I'm thinking if I didn't have to double up my efforts and I recorded one thing instead of two things that I had to edit and I could publish, wouldn't that be better? So kind of debating it, not really sure. Hopefully, maybe over the next months, I will get more into this and maybe understand what I should and shouldn't do. So today, we are covering the last chapter in Michael Hyatt's Free to Focus book, which is all about distractions. It's called Activate, Chapter 9, Beating Interruptions and Distractions. This is a big thing as we start putting this into play. How do we deal with interruptions and distractions? It completes the essence of the book. So what we're going to do in the next two episodes is the next episode, I want to give a summary of the entire book, Free to Focus, all of the stuff we've covered. And then in the next episode, I want to do a summary of all three books back to back. So we've gone through this life plan book. We've gone through your best year ever book. We have gone through the whole Free to Focus. Now, how do we put all of this together? Why did we cover all three of them back to back? And we'll get into this, and this is kind of what we'll do. And at that point, I'll decide what we're going to do next and go forward from there. Hopefully, I'll have made some other decisions about this. Might be, it's going to be around the holiday seasons. If you're listening to me live, we're going to be closer to December and Christmas at that point. Who knows? Maybe I might even take a week or two off for the holidays, kind of regroup, rethink, and then come back in January with some new, fresh stuff to talk about. We'll get into that, though, as we go forward. So we're talking today about activating our plan and how do we tackle distractions and interruptions, especially in the modern workplace. There's a very interesting study, or actually not study, but there's a picture of it in the book of a guy named Hugo Gernsback who created what he called an isolator. And it's funny, you should just look it up. Hugo Gernsback, the isolator, or if you have the book, it has a picture of him. Basically has this massive mask on his head that has a breathing apparatus that he can breathe oxygen that basically shuns out everything except what he's looking in front of him. So he doesn't hear noises. He doesn't have anything. That's pretty radical. This is not what we're going to be dealing with today. But we want to dive into the challenge that plagues a lot of workplaces, and that is distractions. It's ironic when you think back at this inventor, a helmet designed to block out office noise. But fast forward to today, and our distractions have evolved, becoming more digital, but no less disruptive. In fact, they're even worse because they can disrupt us in the most inconvenient of times and places. Especially in the world of open concept offices, our always connected devices, we are facing a constant just deluge of distractions. We have social media notifications. We have endless emails and pop-ups. We have text messages. We have the constant buzz of group chats on phones and things like that. I have my phone set on buzz so it doesn't make noise all the time, but it literally buzzes all day long. It's probably going to buzz as we're dealing with this podcast. It's just constant. It's just not about the noise around us. It's the digital clamor that keeps our minds jumping from one thing to another, constantly frantic that we must check it. It's almost like an addiction. Even if we don't feel a notification, we feel the need to look and peek and see, has someone messaged me? Has something happened? The modern workplace has morphed into a hub of constant communication, constant collaboration. What we gain in shared ideas and teamwork, we often lose in deep, concentrated work. We've talked about this in the deep work session. There's this phenomenon we refer to as the distraction economy. Our attention, it seems, has become a valuable commodity bought and sold without us even realizing it. It's fascinating and alarming. We're trading our focus for the never-ending stream of information. And while collaboration is great, it's vital that we maintain a balance, right? And this is the hardship that we face. Striking that balance is key to not just our own productivity, but also our mental well-being as well. Now that we've painted a picture of this distraction-filled work environment, let's talk a little bit about the cost of this. What does this constant state of distraction do to our productivity and focus? Well, it's a lot more significant than most of us realize. When we're constantly switching our attention, say from a work task to a notification on our phone, we're not just losing time, we're losing cognitive momentum. It's like trying to start a car and stop it every few seconds. That start-stop process is draining. It doesn't make you very productive. I've mentioned this many weeks ago of saying how weird it would be that instead of taking your time to fill up your car to full, you put in $2 and got back on the road to stop 5 miles down the road to stop and put $2 more in to get back on the road. You actually lose way more time by this constant start-stop than you would have if you just stopped for a big block of time to fully fill up your car and then move forward. It's not just about the time that's in the distraction itself, though. It's also in the recovery time. There's a term that's used in academic literature called attention residue. When you switch task, a bit of your attention remains with the previous task. This residue builds up, and before you know it, you're working slower and less efficiently. I've heard about studies showing how multitasking, or what we think of as multitasking, actually impairs cognitive performance. One study even showed that frequent multitaskers experience a significant reduction in IQ, a drop similar to what you'd see after a night of missed sleep, or even, believe it or not, the effects of smoking marijuana or getting drunk. We're effectively dulling our brain with this constant switching. It basically makes us stupid temporarily, is what this research has said when we actually do this and we impair our cognitive functioning. It really puts into perspective the importance of managing our attention in this age of distraction. And remember, it's not just about individual productivity. This has a broader implication on the quality of work and even the quality of our thoughts and ideas. So let's tackle a major culprit in this battle against productivity, which is interruptions. They aren't little annoyances. They're significant disruptions that break our concentration and flow. But the good news is that we have more control over these interruptions than we might think. First up, we need to talk about instant communication. Now, remember the days when a letter took days to reach us? I do. I remember when my grandparents would send me a letter and it would take a week for me to even get it. But now we're bombarded with emails and text and Slack messages and team messages. I mean, you name it, all demanding our immediate responses. The pace of communication has drastically increased, but not every message requires an instant reply. We often confuse speed with importance, leading to more interruptions and less time for focused work. So, what can you do to limit these disruptions? Well, a great start is to turn off unnecessary notifications. Ask yourself which apps truly require your immediate attention. For most of us, very few do. You don't really need to know who is winning the basketball game on ESPN. You don't really need the latest sales coupon from your favorite local store to pop up and distract you. Most of us have all sorts of notifications that are constantly going off. Consider setting specific times for checking your emails or messages. Consider setting windows inside of your apps, which you can do now, to say, this is time that you are not to interrupt me or send me notifications. It's focus time. You can interrupt me from 3 to 5, but don't interrupt me from 1 to 3. It's about creating a virtual barrier, much kind of like Gernsback isolator, but without the oxygen limit and the fear of claustrophobia. It's like a modern virtual version of that isolator. But what can you do about other things like phone calls and text? Well, setting a focus time in your apps would work for text as well and for phone calls. You can manage who has direct access to you as well. For instance, using a service like Google Voice for most contacts and reserving your personal number for family and close colleagues can significantly reduce interruptions that you have. Now, let's shift our focus to self-distraction. Because while interruptions come from the outside, distractions are all about our internal struggles to stay on task. We often are our own worst enemies. When a task is tough or boring, it's tempting to escape into the world of email, social media, or even just surfing the web. But every time we give in to these distractions, we're training our brains to lose focus more easily. So it's like a self-perpetuating cycle, self-fulfilling prophecy. The more we distract ourselves, the harder it becomes to actually maintain focus. We've got to break this cycle. The key is to recognize when we're seeking these, quote, downhill tasks, the easier, less energy demanding activities, and we've got to resist the temptation. Sounds kind of challenging, right? How can you actually build up a resistance to these distractions? Well, it starts with awareness. Notice when you're reaching for your phone or drifting toward another tab on your browser. Pause and ask yourself, is this really necessary? Can I do this later? Can I do and set aside a time when I do this, but not do it right now? Increasing your frustration tolerance, your ability to stay with a challenging task is crucial. It's like mental muscle training. The more you exercise it, the stronger it gets. Incorporating practices like mindfulness can help. Being more aware of your thoughts and emotions allow you to catch these impulses that distract yourself. It's not about always eliminating distraction entirely, although you should always try as best as you can, but it's learning how to manage them and how to respond to them that is the big key for this. So as we move into this final segment, again, summarizing, this is all summaries of this chapter, let's delve into some specific tactics to regain, retain, and refrain or retrain your focus. Not only retain it, but retrain it. It's about using the right tools and strategies to build a fortress of concentration in this world of distractions that we find ourselves in. A great place is to start using technology to manage technology. This is what I was referring to earlier. There are several apps designed to minimize online distractions. There's apps like Freedom, for instance, or in the latest iOS stuff in Apple, they have this whole thing of do not disturb modes or focus modes or sleep modes where only certain things are allowed to come through and you block everything else. It blocks distracting websites. It blocks apps during your work hours. It blocks text messages and notifications, allowing you to focus on what really matters. That's a really smart way to do this. Again, automate. We talked about this weeks ago. Can you automate things in your life? And this is a way that you can automate where you are free of distractions for a certain amount of time. What about the role of music in maintaining focus? Well, music can be a really fantastic way to aid your concentration. The key is to choose the right kind of music, something that may be familiar, not too loud, preferably without lyrics, because then you start singing it. It's a distraction. You start thinking about the lyrics. Some people find that classical music or video game soundtracks are particularly helpful. I have an app on my phone that is called Focus and Focus at Will. And it's basically said to be scientifically based instrumental songs that help you focus and not distract you. Very subtle, more subtle type of songs. I definitely like using it. I haven't used it in a while, but it's a really good thing. What about your physical workspace? Any tips for optimizing it to have a better focus? Sure, your environment plays a crucial role in your ability to focus. If possible, you should change your scenery every now and then. Even within an office, find a quiet corner or a team room you can get into, an empty space room, anything that's just a different setting that can help you concentrate. And of course, decluttering your space is always a good thing. That's something I need to do right now, just looking at my desk. It's all cluttered. A cluttered environment can significantly hamper your ability to focus. It's weird how a really clean environment where things are put away tends to help you focus. You're less distracted for some reason. It's almost like your mind is looking at all this junk everywhere and assuming this is how it's going to behave as well. I don't know why it works that way. But we're talking about taking control of both your digital and physical space to basically create the best environment for focus that you can get. So as we wrap up today's summary of chapter 9 from this book, let's recap some of the key points that we've covered. We started by exploring the landscape of distractions in today's digital age, from constant notifications, our buzzing phones, to the demand of instant responses, to us getting these messages and feeling like I must reply to it at this moment. We have this urgency addiction to everything in our lives, and we got to get past this. We delved into the cost of these distractions, not just in the terms of time lost, but also the cognitive toll that it takes on us. Like we said, it's almost the equivalent of smoking marijuana or being drunk in terms of your ability to focus. It basically makes us stupid temporarily. We shared some strategies for tackling these interruptions, like limiting instant communication, like managing those who have direct access to you. We discussed overcoming self-distraction by increasing your frustration tolerance, about doing mindfulness exercises, being mindful of our impulse to switch. We talked about practical focus tips, from using apps to minimize distractions, using the do not disturb and focus modes on things like Apple phones, the right kind of music that can aid your focus, optimizing your physical workspace. But in total, remember, it's not just about eliminating distractions entirely. Like I said earlier, I don't even know if it's possible to fully get rid of all distractions entirely. It's really about managing them as effective as you can, taking a moment to reflect on your own triggers of distraction and apply strategies that we've been talking about today. Your distractions are unique to you. The things that trigger you to be distracted are unique to you. They're not always going to be the same thing that trigger me. So you're going to find some more things in this book, some other things that you can look at as well. Michael Hyatt has a free tool called the Focus Defense Worksheet. You can go, and again, I think probably to access it, you might have to give them your email, but if you go to freetofocus.com/tools, TOOLS, you can actually download that and help get some extra information about how to do this. So I hope you've enjoyed this today, a little journey in how to reclaim our focus in a world full of distractions. Hope you found this helpful and useful, and that you can put this into practice. This effectively ends the Free to Focus book. We'll come back next week. We'll talk all about the overall message from beginning to end of Free to Focus, remind you of what we've been going through, what this means, and then we're going to come back and talk about all 3 books and go through this. Hope you've enjoyed it today. As always, please consider leaving me a rating or a comment, or share this with someone. I would love it if you might share this and say, hey, check out this podcast. I think you would benefit from this. It's been helping me out quite a bit. Nothing helps spread the word nearly as much as your own endorsement of it. You can reach out to me on my Facebook page, First Things Productivity. Just look it up. You can message me, leave me comments there. You can also email me at firstthingsproductivity.com. And until next time, remember this. We said this earlier. Distractions, probably you won't get rid of all of them. If you can, get rid of as much as you can. What you need to think of your distractions more in terms of how do you manage them? How can you use some of the tips and tricks that we've learned in these episodes to automate and to delegate and to eliminate distractions in your life? Because distractions do you no good. We'll be back next week and talk a lot more about the overall process of Free to Focus. Until next time, Embrace today with passion and intention, and don't die with your music still inside you. See you next time.